Welcome back. This is Joe Blasco here on our Spotlight on Success show for MUA TV. And we're very fortunate today to have Mr. Danny Striepeke with us, because Danny doesn't really do interviews that often. I'm sure he's done a few, but today is a very, very special day. It's been many, many years since I've seen him, and we worked together one time long ago. We'll talk about that. And so right now, this historic moment, without any further ado, let me introduce to the world, to you out there, Mr. Dan Striepeke. Dan.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you
very
for coming
kind
on.
of you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm very, very happy that you were able to make it here today. And I want to thank Deborah for talking to you and
Well,
arranging everything.
I can't say no to Deborah, you know.
Yeah. Deborah, thank you. You're wonderful. And Danny, let's you've seen a lot of change. You've gone so far back in the industry. Everyone, has seen your name on the screen. You're incredibly respected as a makeup artist all over the world. And how did you get started in the business? Let's go way back first.
Okay.
Where did the interest come from?
I originally I grew up in Santa Rosa, California, a small farming community north of San Francisco,
Yes.
and a Depression time.
Yes.
And I got interested in puppets, and I'd carve puppets, and do little puppet shows in the park on Saturday mornings and stuff like that.
How old were you?
I was probably about 7 or 8.
Really?
And, I'd do little one-act plays. I'd write the little plays and then do the characters. And then when I when I went to high school, because I was so shy, I couldn't stand up in a schoolroom and say my name when the roll was called. So I decided to take public speaking, and there was a very well-respected public speaking class and drama class in that high school, in that little rural community. So my second semester as a freshman, I went into the speaking class and I started to blossom. And the teacher saw something and encouraged me to take drama. And being such a bad actor, no. But anyway, I immediately gravitated toward doing makeup in the school plays.
Did you want to be an actor before makeup?
No, I really didn't. And once I got into makeup, I knew that's where I wanted to go.
But what was it that made you gravitate to the makeup end once you got into the drama?
Well, I think the art of it, and of course I was taking art class too,
Yes.
and I tended toward art.
Yes.
I'd always scribble or draw or sculpt or things. And
Which book did you study from when you were
I didn't
young?
have any.
No book?
No, totally self-taught. And I learned to make molds, and I started, and a very good friend of mine, Tom Rivard, his father owned a photo studio in town.
Yes.
So I'd do my work and I'd take it over there, and Mr. Rivard would do photography on it, professional photography.
Right.
In early 1948, Santa Rosa, which had as I said, a fabulous drama speech department,
Yes.
sent 3 students to Canton, Ohio, to compete in a national speech contest, having defeated other states, and I was one of them.
Excellent.
And I won the national.
Fantastic.
And anyway, when we came back to Santa Rosa, there was a big party at this restaurant called the Topaz Room. It was kind of designed after the famous room in Chicago, the Pump Room.
Mm-hmm.
And a producer by the name of Jack Skirball owned it.
Right.
Anyway, my mother was there, and my drama teacher, and the other students and their parents. And I saw at the booth next to us, there was Lloyd Nolan and Patrick Knowles, 2 famous actors,
Yes.
and this other gentleman. And this other gentleman sent a nice something over to the table to congratulate us. And I got up and I went over and I said, well, thank you very much. And I want to be a Hollywood makeup artist.
Oh, that's great.
And he said, well, send me a letter 30 days before you want to get an appointment, and I'll see what I can do for you.
Wow.
And
This was in Chicago.
no, it's in
This was
Santa Rosa.
In Santa Rosa.
Yeah. And
Oh, I see.
So his name was Charlie Frizona, and he was with Beverly Management Company. Anyway, so I got his address and everything.
Right.
I sent him the letter,
Right.
and sure enough, an answer came back. Said, you have a September 5th or whatever it was, to come down and see Ern Westmore at Eagle Lion Studios.
Wow.
So my mother and I drove to Los Angeles, and I had a wonderful week with Mr. Westmore. Frank Westmore was his apprentice at the time.
Yes.
And I had all these pictures, and I brought them down. I must have had 300 pictures of different.
What year was this?
This was early 1948. So Mr. Westmore did a lot of red penciling on the pictures, this and this, and I looked at a lot of hair goods and different things that they had in the makeup department. And so I went home, and I, started practicing more and more and more. So I left Santa Rosa to come to Hollywood in December of 1948.
Yes.
The motion picture business had crashed. Television had just wiped it off the face of it. They hadn't come into widescreen or stereo sound or anything. Am I taking too long?
No.
Okay. So,
Oh, you've got all the time you need.
okay, great. Then in the meantime, Ern Westmore had had a heart attack, and he was out of the business.
I remember that.
And he had an office on Cherokee and Hollywood Boulevard. So I went to see him because he hadn't answered any of my mail or anything. I went to see him. And his secretary was there. She explained what happened. And sure enough, in the drawer was all these pictures. And I had done, all the Shakespearean things, the King Lears, and I had bought the dramatic director's box from Max Factor.
Yes.
And the crepe wool.
So you were prepared.
I was doing it.
Yeah.
So,
Remember those booklets that Factor used to put out?
They were fabulous. They were fabulous.
There were 9 of them.
Exactly.
Max Factor's hints on the art of
did
makeup.
every one.
9 books.
Yeah.
And I believe I may have shown them to you, all of you out there, our audience, on one of our makeup moments.
You have those?
I've got a set of them.
Oh, my God, that's fabulous.
Danny, I've
That's
got it.
wonderful.
They're like pristine.
Oh, but anyway, so, now I'm scrambling to find some work to do,
Yes.
and I've got about $100 between me and nothing in a 1937 Plymouth, and I'm sleeping in my car. I'd go to Elysian Park and
Oh, my God.
pull in there, and so I knew they were closing the gate at night. So
Right.
I slept in my car. One of the original homeless. So to speak. Anyway, so be that as it may, I finally got a job at Bullock's Pasadena, unloading, women's better sportswear and stuff.
Yes.
Just a stock clerk.
Yes.
On a Saturday, I was driving down La Cienega Boulevard, and as God is my judge, there was a sign up said, "Civic Playhouse to open soon, The Fabulous Invalid" by Moss Hart. And we had done the play in Santa Rosa.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's a history of American theater. So and the decline of this one particular theater, Barrymore or his predecessor, and the greats of the theater, Louis Walheim, etc., Bankhead, everybody, and then the decline, and finally it becomes a burlesque house.
Yes.
So there's a lot of makeup.
And you were familiar with all of the makeup
I
that
had
was
done the
required
makeup.
for this.
Yeah,
You already did this.
Yes, I had done it in high
Right.
school.
So you applied for this job.
So I pull in the parking lot with more bravado than brains, probably. And there was a side door ajar, and I went in, and they were in rehearsal. And I sat in the back and watched, and they called a coffee break, and I went up to the director and introduced myself, and his name was John Clare. And I said, "You need a makeup artist for this." He says, "So what?" I said, "Well, I'm your guy." He says, I know the play." So he called an actor out, and he said, "You got your equipment?" I said, "Yes, I have." He says, "Well, make him look like Louis Walheim."
Love it.
Now, Louis Walheim, was a famous German actor who came and became famous on Broadway. He also played Katz in All's Quiet on the Western Front with Lou Ayres. He was a big dramatic, it was kind of a predecessor of Victor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Well, the actor didn't really look like him that much, and the director wanted him to look like him. So I ran out to my car and I got everything. I'm sure it was probably one of the worst makeups in the world. But I made the guy up with the big heavy brow and the
Right.
big nose and everything. And brought him out in the footlights, and the director says, "You're hired."
That's great. That's amazing.
Hell, I'm working. you
How
know?
old were you, Danny?
19.
19.
Yeah. And so they were non-equity. They were open 3 nights a week.
Yes.
So I had $15 a night
Wow.
for the job. But anyway, John
That was
Clare.
good money.
Yeah, John Clare was one of the founders and a director at KTTV. And he got me a job there. And Bud Look at that time was head of the
Head
makeup
of the
department
department,
there.
right.
So I went to work there, and I worked there for, well, up until October of 1950. And then, because of the Korean War,
Yes.
and
Did you go to Korea?
no, I didn't, thank
No.
God. I went in the Air Force and spent my 4 years and came out and came back here.
Do you fly? Are you a pilot?
I was flying, not as a pilot, but as a test guy, test technician on high altitude bombardment navigation equipment. You know, when I went into basic training, I said, "Well, I'm a makeup artist." They said, "Well, it's not in the book." So anyway, wound up working on airplanes. Anyway, came back here.
Right.
And by this time, I'm married and I've got a child. And
But well, let's back up a little bit.
yeah,
What happened when you went to visit Perce Westmore?
Ern.
Or was it Ern?
Ern. yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Ern was running this.
did you work at that time?
No,
at
no,
Eagle
no.
Lion?
I'm just observing.
You were observing.
Yeah. My mother
So-
and I came down.
So was Perce was not there, but it
Perce was at Warner Brothers.
he was at Warner's and Ern was at Eagle Lion.
Eagle Lion. And
how
Wally was
long-
at Paramount.
Right. How long? And Bud was over at Universal.
Yeah.
How long did you observe?
I was there 6 days.
6 days.
Yeah. And that was the deal Mr. Trezona made
Yes.
with Ern.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then he had the heart attack.
He had the heart attack shortly after I left, I guess. Yeah. And then left the business. He was incapacitated.
I see.
Ern, if I may make a comment about
Absolutely.
the Westmores.
Yes. Yes. Please.
Ern Westmore could do more with nothing than anybody I've ever seen in my life. Spit and polish or shoestrings. He never had well, he was in charge of Fox for a while,
Yes.
but he very creative man. Well, so was Perce. Perce
Yeah.
was a creative man, but Perce always had that big establishment around him.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Ern was absolutely marvelous. He was to me, just a young punk kid coming down.
He was a very humble man.
He seemed to be.
Yeah.
He was very good to me. But anyway, so I came back here in the fall of '54
Yes.
and went to get my job back, and they said, no, poo-poo. The station had been unionized, and there was no alternative. So I went to the union, found out where it was.
Who was the man in charge? Was it Hank?
No,
Hank?
Fred
Hank?
Phillips.
Oh, Fred Phillips at that
At that
time.
time.
Yeah.
And Fred said, "Well, there's nothing we can do to, blah, blah, blah." So I got angry.
Yeah.
So I went down to the Veteran Reemployment Rights, and I said, "Now I don't want the man's job who's replaced me. I just want to get the union card." So be Taft-Hartley in. I started to do a lot of reading.
Good.
Anyway, so as it turned out, they made an accommodation for me to work 30 days to become eligible, and became a member of the union and got a TV card. And as things worked out, and timing is so important
Right.
in life,
Absolutely.
in the spring of 1955, this town went ballistic with production. There was Ten Commandments came back
Right.
from Egypt.
C.B. DeMille and Paramount.
Kismet was at MGM. Story of Diane was at MGM. Giant was at Warner Brothers. I mean, all of a sudden, the studios all found big screen, big sound, and they were going for the audience again. And there were, at that time, 164 makeup artists in the union.
Really?
And some of them were so old they were really not very effective.
Right.
So the manpower requirements all of a sudden were dire.
Yes.
10 Commandments would use 50, 55 makeup artists a day.
And Frank Westmore was in
Frank
charge.
was on the picture. Frank McCoy was on the picture.
Was Harry Thomas? Do you remember Harry
Oh,
Thomas?
sure, I do. Sure.
I think Harry worked on that
Oh,
picture.
all those old guys did.
Yeah.
Paul Stanhope Sr.
Right.
I mean, Carl Excel.
Right.
He had a stroke and a Prussian mustache.
Right.
Dick Narr,
Oh,
Ray
Dick
Lopez.
Narr. I got a Dick Narr story.
Ray Lopez, all of them. They're just wonderful characters.
Right.
And crazy. Norman Pringle was running the mob.
Norman
group.
Pringle.
Yeah,
My God.
And Terry Miles, God rest his soul, was running the body makeup thing where they're running them all through, shooting them, spraying them.
Right.
Anyway, evidently Wally and Charlie Gamora decided that in pre-production, while DeMille and the company were in Europe, in Egypt, they made all the beards on solder wire
Yes.
to hang over the ears.
Yes.
So quick.
Right. Throw it on.
And I was there that first day. I think it was the brick pit sequence.
Yes.
And DeMille came on the stage. You never knew quite how he got there. And there was always the chair and the microphone. He go,
The megaphone.
and God had spoken,
Yes.
And he said, "This is totally unacceptable. We will not shoot today. Get me Mr. Westmore."
Oh,
Wally.
Wally, right. Head of the department at Paramount.
Well, if you ever saw anything hit the fan. So
tell us. What
here's
happened?
what had to happen. All of a sudden, the skeins of wool were flowing onto this soundstage. Everybody had their hackles out. Everybody had crimping machines and crimping with irons and crimping with anything.
Yes.
And from then on, every beard in that picture was hand laid.
Yes.
Hand laid, and then for the mobs,
Right.
hand laid, and then what was the old jelly stuff you stick your comb in?
Oh, the bandoline.
Bandoline, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you took the bandoline, you combed the beard with the bandoline.
See, I'm old enough to remember that.
Yeah. Bandoline, and half the beard would be on the floor, but that's
Right.
what it should be.
It was a Max Factor. Max Factor made the
That's
band.
absolutely. It
in
came
a-
dark and
Yeah,
white.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
clear. Anyway,
It was the predecessor to all these modern
oh, yeah,
hair gels
absolutely.
and spiking things.
Absolutely.
Right.
And then you took your fingers and you worked the beard
Right.
with your fingers to
Right.
get all the curl and
Right.
everything in it, and the mustache, and then you sprayed it with Krylon.
Right.
Quick spray,
Right.
and they looked terrific.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
were terrific.
That's right.
And some of the old guys, it got to be one-upmanship,
Right.
I'm going to do better beards.
Right.
And how many beards you can do.
Right.
That's
How fast you could do them.
And I remember a call at MGM, because we would go from Paramount to MGM to Paramount. It seemed like when the calls on Ten Commandments went down, the calls on Kismet went up.
Yes.
And it's almost like they designed it that way because of the lack of
Yes.
manpower.
Yes, exactly.
But on Kismet, it was all very high style.
Yes.
Turkish
Yes.
beards and 5 points and things like that. So it's
All hand laid.
all hand laid also. And I learned a great lesson because about the middle of the call, let's say it's 8:30 in the morning or 8 o'clock, Tuttle and Keister Sweeney, who was Tuttle's assistant, would come walking through.
Right. Bill Tuttle was the head of makeup for all you newcomers out there. Bill Tuttle, William Tuttle, was the head of makeup for Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. All right.
For many, a very talented man also. Anyway, the guys who had 5, 6, 8 people lined up behind them,
Yes.
waiting to get done, they got a call back tomorrow. The ones who had nobody in their chair waiting, they didn't get a call back because the extras knew that if you did really good work on them, they could get special business or maybe a bit part.
Right.
And Tuttle knew that, of course, also. So that was a good winnowing. You got rid of the bad makeup people real
That's
quick.
right, real quick.
They couldn't fake it. It's a wonderful system in
That's
a way.
great.
Kind of cruel, but
it worked.
But honest.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, that year it was, and then I got hired at Warner Brothers. And
Gordon Bow?
Gordon Bow and George.
George Bow.
And they put me on Alexander Scorby,
Yes.
the old Carol, working with Bill Woods.
Yes.
And we did this old age on him, you know, it had
Yes.
the rubber, and the stretch rubber with the gelatin.
Yes.
And you know, the wig was back here. Connie Nichols did the wig.
Mm-hmm.
And
So you did a pate?
a pate, yeah, with actually not even a ball cap, just put it down with George Bow's Lightning, which is no longer in existence,
Right.
unfortunately. The greatest adhesive ever made,
Yes, yeah.
particularly for lifts. I
Yes,
mean, if you want to
yes.
have
Oh,
lifts
that
hold
was-
on, that
would
was
hold.
better than
It was
thumbtacks.
difficult to get off.
Yeah. Anyway, but no shine, you
Right,
know.
right.
And so worked on that until probably almost October of
It's later.
55.
55.
55. And then the picture's finished.
Yes.
And Gordon put me on a television show, and the union says, no,
Yes.
you can't do that because, you know, there are people on the list, blah, blah, blah. So I then was interviewed by Fred Williams at NBC, and he hired me.
Yes.
And I went to work at NBC.
Right. Now, Fred was the head of NBC
Right.
prior to Claude Thompson.
Yes, Claude was his assistant.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And then Harry Blake took over
Right,
after
from
Claude
Yes,
retired.
right, exactly.
Yes. Is Claude still with us?
Yes,
He
I
is.
have breakfast with him.
You did?
We have a breakfast
Oh,
where
we-
there's about 8 of us, and Claude is there.
Oh,
and
Danny.
he's the dearest man.
We got to get Claude in.
Oh, he's the dearest man in the world.
I worked with him.
He has
over-
great stories.
Yeah, oh, terrific stories. Claude Thompson, head of makeup for NBC for many, many years.
Yeah.
And we'll try to get him in also.
Yeah, Claude has, has always had infirmities because he crashed off an aircraft carrier. He was flying
I didn't know that.
aircraft during World War II,
Mhm.
and he crashed and gave him a huge onset of
Yeah.
arthritis and things. But he's the most likable and
Yeah, he's terrific.
delightful
Terrific,
man.
and a very, very,
Absolute
very
delight.
excellent maker. He did Peggy Lee's makeup.
Yes, he did,
For a long
and
time.
and Dinah Shore
Yes.
for
Yeah.
the whole time. So I went to work at NBC, and I was doing the Tennessee Ernie Ford
I got.
daytime
Yes,
show
yes.
and the news hour sometimes at
Yes,
night.
yes.
And then John Chambers and I met
Yes.
at NBC,
I see.
and we were doing in the morning the Pinky Lee show.
Oh, yes.
You
Yes.
remember that? of
I
course.
do.
Grumpy and
Oh,
those
yes.
characters. Wow.
Whoa, that goes way back.
That's where John and I started.
Wow.
And
Amazing.
we became very close friends,
Yes.
and both in our families and in our professional lives.
Yes.
And it carried through, as you
Yes,
know, till
yes.
a long time after.
Now, let me ask you this. When you did The Magic Sword, this is one of the first films, you did all form of prosthetic makeup. Was this before you met John Chambers?
No.
This was after.
This was after. I'll tell you how the Magic Sword came about. After NBC, I went back to Warner Brothers.
Yes.
And worked on, well, like Maverick and,
Yes.
and Sugarfoot and all
Right.
those westerns. And then I had an offer from Bud Westmore, because he had heard that I had some lab experience, to come and work at Universal, because Jack Keevan had left.
Yes.
And I didn't know what to do. So let me preface this.
Okay.
George Bow was so wonderful to me
Yes.
in my life. I just can't tell you how wonderful.
He was a great guy.
I was working at Warner Brothers, and I was on stage 26, I think it was, and I
Yeah.
standing there, and I fell down. My left leg was totally dead, and I had a collapsed disc and ruptured, and had to have a
Surgery.
laminectomy,
My.
a back surgery.
Yes.
And I've been walking ever since, thank God.
Yes.
But I'll never forget it, because I was really down and out, and I had 2 children by this time, and I'll never forget a Thanksgiving. George comes to the door, turkey, everything.
George. We're talking George Bow.
So anyway, when this time came about going to Universal, I went to George and I said, this is the offer. He says, hey, kid, take it.
Yes.
And he says, if you run into anything you don't know how to do, call me.
Did you work the list of Adrian Messenger?
No, I did not.
No.
I just worked a little bit when we did the impression on Kirk Douglas.
On Kirk Douglas.
But anyway, so I went to work at Universal, and we were preparing Spartacus. Now, I'm thrown into this big cauldron. And we,
Well, after the Ten Commandments.
well, I know, but now I'm working on principles.
Yes.
It's a huge screen
Right.
thing. So I'm not only doing the prosthetics like Olivier's nose
Yes,
and that
yes.
sort of thing, which, by the way, Jack Freeman was doing the makeup on him. Did a marvelous job. And but I mixed the 30 gallons of body makeup every morning and the
Yes.
15 gallons of blood every morning.
Yes.
And everything fresh. And the full-size body of Woody Strode after he'd been killed
Yes.
with the fight with Douglas.
Yes.
And they hung his body.
Yes.
Well, we did a full cast of him
cast.
and then recreated it,
What did you use as impression material at that
I
time?
have to tell you, I got 4 plasters from the staff shop. Staff shop, meaning where they do all the plaster work,
Right.
that sort of thing in the studio. And one guy, his name was Jimmy Needle Toes, because his shoes were always pointed like needles. And they had these little bronze or brass bowls about that big,
Yes.
and they're flexible.
Yes.
They could flex them.
Yes.
And they do what they call, the piss coat.
Yes.
And the reason that came about was if they wanted to accelerate the plaster, they would, in the
Urinate.
plaster, the salt.
That's
Which
right.
accelerates.
For the salt.
Yeah,
Right.
to
Right.
accelerate the plaster.
Well, later we graduated to actually putting salt
Yeah,
in.
actually putting salt in, but I mean, that was what they used to do, Anyway. So.
I wonder how they discovered that.
I don't know. Probably somebody in Greece. But anyway, these guys were just fabulous. They were old staff men.
Right.
So here's what we did. We had Woody Strode, when he was laid out the whole way,
Yes.
he was over 10 feet long.
Wow.
And a big man.
Yes.
And we did a case line.
Yes.
A clay case line. We had him as face down.
Yes.
And made him as comfortable as possible,
Yes.
pillows, et cetera, et cetera. And then did a water clay case line around him. And then
The whole back.
we did plaster right through the body.
Whoa.
And it was a piss coat.
Yes.
Yeah. Now what?
Now, he didn't know that.
Well, I don't think they did it, but anyway, they use these little bowls, and it's easy to clean because they just flex them a little bit and all
Right,
the
it
plastic.
all comes out.
Better than plastic.
Right,
actually.
right.
Anyway, and they carried it like it was a prized possession. So then we did that coat, and then while that's set up a little bit, then we do the fiber,
Yes.
and then they do the fiber up and tuba twos, longitudinal
Yes.
tuba twos,
Yes.
and the whole body's encased, right?
Right.
Woody, don't breathe deep. You gotta breathe
Don't crack.
shallow, right? So we got the back half off. It took us all day, just about. Came off perfect. It's just
Great.
wonderful. So now we're doing the front half tomorrow. And meanwhile, I had taken a cast of his face with Negacol.
Negacol, right.
Yeah.
Remember that Negacol and hominid?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But we used mostly Negacol.
Negacol, yeah.
You cook it.
Right, exactly. So it's like a gelatin type.
Wonderful stuff
Yeah,
to
yeah,
work with,
yeah.
really, because you gave you
We used
plenty
to
of
use-
time.
Yeah, I used to use it
A lot
all
of
the time.
time. Anyway, so I did that, which I was gonna put into insert later.
Yes.
So now we do the top half, and he's got shorts on.
Right.
And we grease him up a little bit, and then comes the,
Right. Piss coat.
the case line's already there from the other mold, of
Right.
course. So we get it all done. I said, now
Did
Woody.
you grease the
I said,
the
now
bottom
Woody.
half?
Woody, I said, now when this sets up, you've got to give us a few minutes, and you cannot breathe deeply, and please don't hyperventilate. It's going to be very constrictive on you.
Yes.
So the plaster sat, and he started screaming.
Oh, my God.
Because he got very claustrophobic.
Sure,
He felt
sure.
like he was going to die.
Well, you can imagine the whole body
Well,
is
yeah, and
encased
he's like
and the
this.
arms up like
Yeah.
that.
and a huge amount of weight.
No, but his head, his face was
Just
exposed.
that much was
Just
open.
that much, yeah.
So he starts yelling, "Get me out of here, get me out of here." So we start cracking along the
All the way
edges,
around.
and we get it up, and sure enough, my God, right on his left inside ankle bone, we had an undercut.
Oh,
Undercut. And I just grabbed a hammer and I just
bang.
hit it.
Yeah,
you know.
that's it.
And he's using every expletive in his being about us, you know. Anyway, we got the mold out. So in those days, what you do an eggshell mold inside of that mold.
Yes,
That would be very thin plaster,
Yes.
very thin ribs.
Yes.
And you take that gently out,
yes.
put the two halves together, and then spend 2 weeks pointing it up.
I see.
And I'd inset the face.
Yes, yes.
And that's
That's a-
and then you make a mold off of that
Yes.
to do.
We've gone a long way since then, haven't we?
Yeah, we have.
That's great.
But you learned a lot
That's
doing
right.
it that way. Yeah, I'll tell you.
This was pioneering work.
Yeah, beautiful body.
Yeah,
It came
absolutely.
out beautifully,
Yeah,
really.
looked perfect.
And airbrushed, of course. Anyway, so I worked for Bud on Spartacus. I also did Tony Curtis with,
Yes.
played the Indian boy Ira Hayes
Yes.
in The Outsider.
Yes.
Nose
Yes.
again.
Yes.
And,
It's all foam latex you were
It
working
was
with.
all foam,
Yes.
yeah. And
Hey, were
Then-
you,
then-
excuse me, were you doing all of the mold making and
Yes.
foaming the rubber,
yeah,
everything?
I
You
did
it all?
I did it all, yeah. And then there came a lull at Universal,
Yes.
and Bud says, "I'm gonna have to lay you off." And I met Emil Levine.
Yes.
Now, Emil Levine, he was a Canadian,
Yes.
French Canadian,
Yes.
Lavigny, actually. you
Yes,
know.
yes.
And very well-known makeup artist,
Yes.
highly respected and feared.
Very, very,
And feared.
very.
And he and Bill Tuttle were the two contemporaries vying for the department head at MGM,
MGM.
when Jack Dawn decided to leave.
I see.
Emil didn't get it,
Yes.
Bill did.
Yes.
But Emil was huge in the independent field.
Yes,
And he
yes.
was with Allied Artists.
Yes.
And then with Mirisch, of course.
Yes.
So anyway, yeah, he was at Universal for some reason or other. And he met me and he asked me if I was interested in going on an independent film. And I was going to get laid off at Universal, so I went to talk to Bud,
Yes.
and he said, "Well, yeah, but," he said, "you got to come back." You know, I said, "Sure, of course, you know, whatever." So anyway, I went with Emil on Magnificent Seven. Now, I think in those days as a lab man, I was making around $278 or $280 a week. And I went with Emil and made 700.
Wow, very
I
good.
said, "Well, this is the
Yeah,
way to
he-
go."
he welded some
So
power
anyway,
there.
off to Mexico we go, and you know the cast: Yul Brynner, Steve
Yes,
McQueen, Charlie
yes.
Bronson. We had a huge cast, a lot of stuntmen, and we were beards on, beards off.
Yeah.
And, you know, Emil liked my work, and as I said before we started doing this, the makeup artists used to say, "I don't want to work at Universal, I don't want to work at MGM, and I don't want to work for Emil Levine." Very tough man, but I found him very fair too. If you knew your craft and exercise your art correctly,
Yes.
you just go fine. So anyway, I did Irma La Douce with Emil, I did West Side Story, Children's Hour, Hawaii, just on and on and on.
Yes. These are monumental films.
Big films, yeah. And in between, at that time, I did Sound of Music. I worked, and
Were you here in town working on these films, or
yeah,
you were on
well,
location as well?
And location.
Did you go to Europe
Yeah.
with Sound of Music?
Sound of Music, I didn't know. I picked it up here.
I see.
I was doing Eleanor Parker,
I see. Yes.
lovely lady, and I was also doing The Children.
Oh, really? Yes.
Yeah, and which is I'll tell you a little bit about later.
Good.
Anyway, so I did a picture with Ernie Kovacs called "Wake Me When It's Over."
Loved Ernie Kovacs.
Yeah, he's a fabulous guy. That was wonderful.
We really lost a
Wonderful.
great talent when he passed
Yeah.
away. He was a pioneer in television. Just
Very tragic.
amazing.
Very
yeah.
tragic. So I had a wonderful widespread spectrum of experiences, and John Chambers was doing the lab work,
Yes.
and I'd recommended John to Emil,
Yes.
And I had also recommended John to Bud Westmore when I left Universal, because I didn't go back.
Yes.
And of course, John did List of Adrian Messenger
Yes.
and Slaughterhouse-Five,
Yes.
and, you know, historic stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
And also Kill a Mockingbird,
Yes.
etc.
He was really, here in this city, aside from George Bow, he came in after George Bow, more or less, or around the same time.
Later.
And he brought foam latex processes and
Yes, and
procedures
he also-
to another level.
Yes, he also brought techniques from dental
Yes.
laboratory
yes,
work.
yes.
And John, did a lot of dental lab
Yes.
for the VA.
Yeah, he worked in Chicago, I believe.
Yes, and
in the
and
hospital.
also reconstructive
Yes.
for veterans. And he brought just a lot of good new ideas and
Yes.
techniques
Mold
that are
making especially.
used today.
Yes.
No, John was amazingly talented man.
Yes.
Amazingly talented. I love him. And we had a, well, I'll go on further
Yes.
later. Anyway, so after Hawaii, I did Mission Impossible.
Yes.
John and I did the pilot, and we had the dictator makeup on Marty, and Barbara Bain, of
Yes,
course, as
yes.
Cinnamon and all the rest of it.
Yes.
So anyway, I went ahead and did the series. John went his way, and I got myself, just really in a bind because of the disguises and everything.
Yes.
So I thought up the idea of pulling the mask off and doing the double trickery,
Right.
save my
The old
yeah,
hiding the mask, yeah, right.
and save my fanny, So, which has been used a lot.
Oh,
since-
ever since.
So,
Even CGI is using it now.
Yeah.
They do that whole
yeah,
thing.
yeah. And so I had a wonderful year on Mission Impossible, and I met fabulous people. And one of them was Bernie Kowalski, who I'll tell you about a little later. And I finished that, and I was totally exhausted. And I was at home, and Ben Nye called me. Now, Ben Nye was department head at 20th Century
Now, this
Fox.
is late. I apprenticed with Ben.
Pardon?
I apprenticed with Ben Nye.
Yeah.
Not at 20th, but at his shop
Oh, at his shop.
after he left
Oh.
20th.
Oh,
I
my-
was there for almost 3 years,
Oh,
if not more.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, for
well,
years.
Well, you had a great teacher.
Yeah.
So Ben called me and he said, what are you doing? And I said, I just finished 10 months of Mission Impossible.
Right.
I did the whole show by myself.
Yeah.
And I was exhausted. And he says, I'd like to have 12 of them. I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, I want you to come over here and interview for the department head. Now, prior to that, they had done a test a year before, several tests on Planet of the Apes, and none of
Yes.
them were successful.
Yes.
And the studio saw fit to call on John Chambers. John was in Spain doing something on Bob Culp,
Yes.
a warlord, Oriental warlord or something. So John came to Fox in March, I believe it was, of 1967, and started designing prosthetics for apes, and they did a test, and it was eminently successful.
Yes.
Well, the first one wasn't because they were trying to do an Edward G. Robinson. And Robinson was claustrophobic.
Ben did this, and I
he
saw
was-
pictures.
yeah,
He showed me pictures.
And he was tearing it off.
Right.
Anyway, finally, John got an actor who would wear it, and it was history.
Yes.
And so anyway,
That was the beginning there.
Oh.
Of doing
Big break.
bringing
Big break.
foam prosthesis into a big budget
Mainline.
film.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that made this film.
so I interviewed for the department head role, and I know John had a part in that
Yes.
drama, and I was hired.
Yes.
And I came on board, and, I was very young. I think I was 36 or 37.
Yes.
And, but I had that basic foundation.
Yes.
And I
Oh,
had,
you
a-
had
and I had a
much
good
more
work
than
ethic,
basic.
but, I had the training
Right.
to be tough in the
Yes.
tough parts.
Yes.
So anyway, I'll never forget the first budget meeting I went to.
At Fox.
At Fox.
Fort Apes.
In my life, ever.
Oh.
And they have all the tab
Right.
runs on Friday morning.
Right.
And you sit there, and the head of the production,
Right.
Doc Merman, wonderful, garrulous gentleman. You go down, there's X amount to this week, and how many, and you've spent so much, and how much you've got left. And I said, well, gentlemen, I need, it was down to almost zero. And I said, well, I need $80,000 to work for the next 3 weeks. Merman went ballistic. He went running out of the office, out of the boardroom. He says, gee, he says, I've heard you're good, but he says, I know you're damn expensive, you know. I said, well, that's what it's gonna take to
Now, wait a
do
minute.
this.
Let me catch up here. Which film is this for?
Planet of the Apes.
This is for Planet of the
Planet of the
Apes.
Apes.
Well, I can understand why.
The original budget on Planet of the Apes was $87,000.
No way.
Yes.
For
Well,
makeup.
For makeup and hair.
For makeup and hair.
And I said, this isn't even gonna touch the first base.
Nothing.
And they didn't want to believe it. So anyway, they brought Stan Huff in to the budget meeting, and he was the super production,
Yes.
right under Dick Zanuck. And he says, now you're telling me, he probably called me a punk, but he didn't. You're telling me this is,
This is
I
going to
said,
cost
I'm
us.
telling you, if you want to go ahead with this film,
And you want it to be
and
successful.
you want it to be what
Right.
everybody wants it to be,
Right.
what's expected from the test that John Chambers did, I said, this is what it's going to cost. And I gave him a number of $303,000. Well, you thought the San Andreas Fault had come apart, California's falling off the edge of the earth. So they gave me $50,000. So I go back to the department, I said, we're crunching the numbers all over again. Now I'm really thrown into this maelstrom,
Yes.
And I said, no way, can't, if we can cut 10,000 out of this, we'll be lucky.
Yes.
So anyway, it came in at 287,000
Wow.
at the end of the picture. But it was such a milestone and such a breakthrough.
Absolutely.
Now, we would have 55 makeup artists a day, like in the cornfield.
Yes.
We had 23 gorilla appliances.
Yes.
We had Chuck Keston, the girl,
Yes.
and all the humans with
Yes.
all the wigs and the beards and the body makeup and everything.
The orangutans.
The orangutans came in a little later.
Later,
But in the cornfield was all gorillas.
Oh, I see. Gotcha.
And when you got the ape village,
Right.
you had to populate that. And
Yes.
anyway, it was tremendous effort. In fact, there was no facilities to handle it out at the Fox Ranch.
Yes.
So what I did, I figured, well, let's get a couple of 55-foot construction trailers, and we'll take them down to the mill at
So
Fox
you started
Studios.
the makeup trailer.
I did. And
Jeff Don, this is your man right here. You can thank him.
but
Right.
I had no other way to go. So
Right.
the mill built the trailers, the interior,
Right.
and with two 55-footers, we could accommodate everybody.
Right.
And it was tremendous effort. And the thing that was incredible was that John brought that whole thing of prosthetics, but he also brought the dentistry to where the bite.
Yes, was
The
perfect.
bite's way out here,
Right, right.
and everybody's bite is different.
Right.
And the studio couldn't understand why they couldn't use the same thing on everybody. No, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
So, and we were getting actors like Roddy McDowell. We had him 3 days before he worked. Take the impression, make the
my God.
mold, sculpt, do the whole thing, and
Oh,
shoot
my
rubber.
God. That's insane.
And now, I had the lab running 24 hours a day.
Yes.
And we had 2 shifts of 12 hours.
Yes.
And we could barely keep up, barely keep up. In fact, on Roddy, we were never more than 1 or 2 appliances ahead.
My God.
And you know what that's
Yeah,
like
that's
to
insane.
be living with that.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, the picture got
what
made.
time of the year was it? What was the
It was
what was the
spring.
weather like? It was spring.
Spring, May.
Yeah.
April, May. And
At least that was in your favor.
a little bit, yeah.
So you were filming everything. You were doing everything
Everything
at
was foam.
Fox.
Everything was painted. We painted foam in first, non-foam, just the liquid.
Just a foam base, just
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
to skin the
Give
mold.
give a skin
Right.
only on the muzzle part.
Yes. Yes.
And then Then we pre-shoot open
Yes, and then
part
you-
of the chin and part of the muzzle.
Yes.
And then close,
Close,
and then
then
shoot the rest
then
of the
inject.
And the rest of it.
Interesting.
Now-
Did you use weights on it, or clamps, or both?
Clamps.
Clamps.
And there wasn't enough, once again, in my lifetime, there wasn't enough help to do the
Right,
picture.
right.
So I went to the union and got special dispensation to hire 10 men,
Yes,
train them to do 8 prosthetics.
yes,
And we decided we were going to train on a very narrow
yes,
way. The prosthetics were all pre-painted,
yes. Assembly line.
except the edges.
Mhm.
So they applied the upper and lower piece.
Yes.
Actually, upper piece first.
First the upper, then the
And,
lower.
and then,
Chin
then
piece.
the actor would have breakfast.
Mhm.
And then apply the
And
chin,
the chin.
and then do all the hair pieces.
Yes.
With the overlay,
Yes.
and then the wig would go on, and then finally the forehead piece. But
Yes.
there also ears went on,
Yes,
and hands,
yes,
and fingernail
Yes.
polish. So they were trained to do specifically that.
Yes.
And there were 10 people. I don't know what, I won't name them.
It's all right.
Huh?
That's okay. I know who they are.
Yeah, it's
Are they
you
still,
know,
most of them are still working in the business today.
yeah,
aren't they?
well, Marie Stein.
Marie Stein was
yeah,
one of those.
Ken Chase was
Yes.
part of that.
Good, I mean, these are good names in the business.
Yeah. They had a lot of training on that
Yeah,
picture.
absolutely.
Anyway, so.
I had Marie Stein in here.
Did you really?
Yeah, about a month or so
Oh,
ago.
good, good. He's
And
got
he-
a good business.
Oh, yeah,
going,
he does.
doing
And he
fine.
talked a lot about working on apes.
Yeah.
So you really made an impression on him, I'll tell you.
Yeah. So, anyway, we did that picture. Meanwhile, I also had 12 and a half hours of television.
Yes.
Which a lot of it was Irwin Allen.
Yes, yes, yes. Right there at Fox.
At Fox.
You know,
Well, we had Desilu Culver going, and we also had, in those days, had Western Avenue.
right, oh, yeah.
Facilities.
Oh, that's right. I remember the studios on Western Avenue. What a shame it was when those came down.
You know, I have to tell you, I'm in the middle of Planet of the Apes, and it's just, you know, plus I've got the picture star, and we're preparing, well, Peyton Place was still going. and-
Danny, hang on one second.
Yeah.
Can I interrupt you just for
Sure.
a minute? You know, we have to break for a commercial. I'm really sorry. But we're going to be right back in just a second, all right?
All right.
Don't you go away.